The question remains, was it worth it? Was 22 years of school worth it? All right. This is the giant hard kombucha, spelled wrong. I guess they did it intentionally. It's spelled with a J. And it is 5% alcohol and it's called guavamente and it's guava and mint. And it's brewed with green tea. And let's see. This is my first time trying hard kombucha. It kind of smells like normal kombucha, if I'm being honest. I can't really taste the alcohol. If anything, it tastes kind of like beer, but I also don't really taste the guava or the mint. So I wasn't really expecting like guava juice or anything, but it just kind of tastes nice, light and refreshing. Flavor is, maybe it'll grow on me. Let me keep consuming and see how I feel by the end of this. Today, I want to talk about school. This semester was the last required semester of courses, and it hasn't really hit me yet because I have basically operated as a student really my entire life. I started going to school when I went to like daycare when I was younger, but I started going to school when I was 4. I had a very kind of traditional grammar school experience, grammar school, middle school, elementary school experience, and then kind of similar to high school as well. And then, I followed that timeline. And then at the end of high school, that was the first time that I deviated slightly from the traditional path of education in the United States, and I did a gap year. I had that year off, and then I went to college, and then I went straight into my master's program, and then I went straight into my PhD program. So in total, that is only 5 years of my life that I have not been in school officially. Yeah, that's 22 years of schooling, which is a lot. And I have some feelings about it. And so today I want to talk a little bit more about that. So as I was thinking about how I wanted to talk about this topic, I came across a YouTube video by Middle Ground, I think, or it's called Middle Ground and it's by Jubilee. And it was called Dropouts and Graduates, Is College Worth It? Basically bring a bunch of people together and they talk about something. And so this was bringing groups of people who had dropped out of school and then graduates from college to talk about this question, is college worth it? And so they gave multiple statements, people who agreed with these statements kind of moved to the center and then explained their reasoning, and then the other people joined in. They just kind of had a discussion about it. So I figured I would answer some of these questions because I've had a lot of time to think about it, and my thinking has also changed as I've made my way through my various years of school. So let's get into it. So I'm gonna think about these questions and answer, pretending that I was actually in the room doing this activity. The researcher in me would be really curious to see if they had only one person and they were forced to walk instead of seeing what other people's decisions were, because obviously I think there's an element of bias there. But anyway, first statement was, I feared I'd be judged if I didn't go to college. I would absolutely say yes. And part of this is because of the school that I went to growing up. College, especially going to like elite colleges, was heavily pushed on all of us. I would also say that I have kind of struggled and continue to struggle with feeling like an imposter as an Asian American. And because of the model minority myth, also just a variety of factors, right? But education felt to some extent like a connection to my identity and kind of proving and like validating my identity. So being good at school was a way for me to show that I was a good Asian, like I was a good Chinese person, a good Chinese kid. And this really mattered to me because I really was wanting acceptance, at least in the early stages. I think I was really wanting acceptance. And so school was a way to do that. So excelling in school, even though I honestly think I was kind of average in school, if I'm being honest, but like excelling in school in a way became a way for me to have closer proximity to this identity. Obviously, my thinking around this has changed a little bit, but this was very true when I was younger. All right, second statement. I believe college should be free. This is a very easy answer for me. Yes, I absolutely think college should be free. Like any type of education should be free. I have my own complicated feelings about the structure of education in general and just how we assign value and kind of create these constructed degrees of, you know, now that you've taken this many credits, like here's your degree and now that makes you smarter. So I have a lot of feelings about that, but that aside, operating within the current system we have, absolutely college should be free for everybody. Yeah, I don't really feel like I have to say that much else about this other than, yeah, it should just be accessible. Statement 3. If everyone went to college, it would be useless. So I have mixed feelings about this, right? One is kind of like a theoretical lens about this point, and I think that it's operating from a very scarcity mindset of like, for something to be valuable, only a few people can have it. But I think that this is very much a scarcity statement. I don't agree. That's not like the type of framing that I try to use. I think that to some extent, you could argue that the way that this is played out is true. Previously, when only like white, able-bodied, affluent folks, when they were the only ones who had access to education, it was inherently more valuable. And I think as more like marginalized groups who don't fit that box, that very, very narrow box, have started to go to college and gain access to these institutions, I do think that to a certain extent, right, if you've heard the phrase like the master's is the new bachelor's, I do think that for a lot of, now that like, so more and more people have their bachelor's degrees, it's almost like there's now a next step for people in order to kind of stand out for some of these jobs. Again, I don't think you actually need most of these degrees to do the majority of jobs that are out there. But 4, I know what I want to do with my life. Solidly no. I think that, you know, you've probably listened to my first Existential with Emily chat where I basically talk about how I don't know what I want to do and I don't know what I want anymore, really. I think I have a general idea of like what I would like my life to look like, but I don't really know how to get there necessarily. Okay, final statement. Education is the key to success. Because I like overthinking, I would probably ask a follow-up question. I need a definition of what we're saying is education in this case, because if we're saying degrees, that's one answer. And if we're saying just learning in general, that's another thing. And then also like, what do you mean by success? I don't think that degrees are the key to success. I think that depending on the field you're in, you might need a degree, but again, more broadly, less so, honestly. I think that in anything, like anything that you do, there's going to be a need to learn. Whether or not it needs to happen in the structured environment of school, probably more debatable. So after all of that, the question remains, was school worth it? Was going to school for 22 years of my life worth it? And surprise, I don't really have an answer to this. I think that in some regards, you know, whether or not it will be worth it will become evident in the years coming. I do think that specifically as it relates to like advanced degrees, I have noticed that doors have opened for me and people tend to treat me slightly differently when they know that I'm in a PhD program. So I would say it has made a difference. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's been worth it though. At this point, you figured out that I kind of don't know what I'm doing. So in that regard, if you see school as a kind of a way to help you figure out what you want to do, it might not do that. So just a word of word of caution. But I think that in general, at least, one of the things that I've been kind of working on with myself is feeling less ashamed of the fact that I actually really like school. I think that when I talk to some of my friends or random people, a lot of times I get very, I don't want to say they're people aren't really judgy, but it is very much kind of like, why are you choosing to do school for so long? And I think that previously I probably, and sometimes I still do, admittedly, feel a little bit kind of ashamed of this, or just ashamed of the fact that I like school. And I think that even though there are very, very valid critiques of, you know, school, the classrooms, the school system, the education system more broadly, I think that for me at least, I really like learning. I like engaging with things, and I do that best in a school setting. You don't have to be in college to do these things at all, but for me, that's, you know, I need that structure and I really like it. So I leave this video with perhaps more questions than answers, but I would be very curious to know how you all would have responded to those statements if you were in the room. I would love to know your experience with school and education, and just, you know, whether or not you like it or if you want to do more school. I love talking about this, as you can probably tell. So I would love to know what you all think. So let me know. Let me know in the comments below. And I will see you in the next one.